Good afternoon. This is Sean Freeman, independent for U.S. House of Representatives seat Ohio 11 in this November's race. Yesterday, I made a post showing my yard sign with the other yard signs I support at the federal and the state level. And it got some reactions. I wanted to take this time just for a brief few minutes to describe why I'm voting the way I am and to remind you it is your choice who you would like to vote for, but this is just my personal take on it. The reason I made the post in the first place is that running as independent, one of the first questions people have when you knock on their door is, who else do you support? What side are you on? Two very different questions. Who I support and what side I'm on. The side I'm on is the people, your side. The reason I'm running independent is because I don't believe either party has truly fulfilled or been able to act upon what we need most. As you can see by rising prices, just rising levels of anger across this country and a growing divisiveness. So that is who I'm running for. In terms of who I support for this race, it's not going to always be on the same party ticket, but this time around at the federal level, as well as for the state issue one, I am leaning towards the Democratic side. And I want to share why I'm voting the way I am. For the presidential race, I will be voting for Vice President Harris as well as Governor Walz on their presidential ticket. The reason I'm doing this, personalities and egos aside, is based on their policy. The governor, during his time in Minnesota, has enacted free school lunches for all students across the state. That's at a price of $240 million per year. A third of what the city of Cleveland and Cuyahoga County was willing to offer the Haslam family to keep the stadium downtown. So for 3 years of feeding all children here in our district, it'd be even less in the district. This is for the entire state of Minnesota. So to be able to feed at least 3 years worth of kids in this district, one of the poorest places for children to live, we are willing to offer that one time to the Haslam family who are billionaires. Not only is it an economically sound idea, but it's putting our tax dollars to things that we can all agree on, feeding the children who live here. Also, largely the reason I'm voting for Vice President Harris and Governor Walz is I do not want to support President Trump, former President Trump, or current Ohio Senator J.D. Vance. And that reasoning is threefold. The first is what former president did to the debt while he was in office. In just 4 years, he elevated our national debt by $7 trillion. Obama, over 8 years, elevated our national debt by $7 trillion. So in half the time, Trump added the same amount to the debt as Obama. By comparison, Biden in his time in office has increased our national debt by $4.7 trillion, nearly $2.5 trillion less than what President Trump did. And this is important because one of the largest things I hear from Trump supporters as well as the media in support of him is because he's a businessman, someone who helped grow our economy. Everyone felt that they were doing better and working better when he was in office. But that's because he added $7 trillion to the debt in just 4 years' time. Made it look really well during that time, but didn't help us out in the long term because it puts more of a burden on us as we continue going, especially my generation and further down. The other main principle was the tax cuts. Those tax cuts in 2017 were terrific, were a great thing for not only people like us, but corporations in the entire country benefited from them. But the part that we miss, that is so crucial, is these tax cuts are set to expire in 2026. So the rates that we had, just as citizens and people, that was lower over the last 7 or so years, will go back up to what it formerly was. But in those same tax cuts, the corporations that got the decrease in taxes, their tax decrease will stay. So theirs will continue to stay low, but taxes will increase for us, beginning in 2026. Think about this in the political game for 1 second. Trump in 2017 and his team said, we're going to lower taxes for everyone through the remainder of his term, through 2020, and through the next term, anticipating that he was going to win the 2020 race. So the tax cuts have stayed the same throughout Biden's time, but they're going to expire and will get higher rates. That's just the worst part of politics on display. Looking like you're advocating for the common man, the common people like ourselves, but ultimately only doing it for that short period of time so that you look the best and leaving us out to dry after just 9 years. The final part is not being willing to abide by the rules of what it means to run for a race. When you win, you win. And when you lose, you lose. And when everyone is in agreement, all the statistics between our Secretary of State, we're less than 1%, it's like 100th%, that commit voter fraud here in this state. You question them and question everyone across the country. It's part of the divisiveness that we see, where people are being pulled apart because we don't know what actually is true and what's not. And that starts with people who run in races and say they will not accept the results of the election, accept the results that we, as citizens, voted for and cast our ballot for. That's a core principle of democracy, accepting what happens at the ballot box, because we have so many dedicated workers, not only here within Cuyahoga County and the district, across the state of Ohio, but also across the country, working to make sure that we preserve our democracy by counting every single vote the proper way and from U.S. American citizens. I can't tell you how many times I've been reached out to during this campaign to know, will I stand for the results of the election no matter what? To me, that's a core fundamental value of running for office, and that's something that the former president cannot and still will not accept. On to the Senate race. I will be supporting current Senator Sherrod Brown in his race against the Republican challenger, Bernie Moreno. To be perfectly honest with you, I do not know much about Bernie Moreno. All I know is that both campaigns are spending over $70 million in ads for the next month for us to watch. And yet, neither are having a debate. My race isn't getting a debate because it's considered not significant enough, or not even minute competition, opposition to the current representative. This race is crucial not only for the country, but the state, and yet we don't even get 15 minutes where we see the candidates on stage together, advocating for themselves and declaring why we should vote for them. I would much rather have it where we just have 1 hour that we all have to watch as a debate, rather than hear $70 million worth of ads that we've already heard for the last 3 or 4 weeks, for the last 2 weeks now. That would be a much better trade and much better for our democracy. I'm voting with Sherrod Brown, despite there not being a debate, because of his track record of what he has done for the state of Ohio. It's clear, based on his policies, that he has always been advocating for people here in this state and will continue to do so. For that, he has my support. Now, for the state issue 1 that's on the ballot, this is a constitutional amendment that will put redistricting, whoever draws the maps, into the hands of 15 citizens, people who aren't former politicians, related to current candidates, or not part of political systems. There has to be a certain number of Democrats, a certain number of Republicans, a certain number of independents on this committee that will create free and fair districts so that we are supporting the best people going forward. The reason why this is an important thing to vote for is because the current process just has not worked. The last 6 times, state lobbyists and state legislators who are currently in charge of building our districts put them up to our Supreme Court in Ohio, which currently has a Republican lean. They've been labeled unconstitutional 6 straight times, saying that what we have doesn't fit into our Constitution of what's considered free and fair. 6 tries they've had, and it hasn't worked. So while issue 1 might have some bumps in the road, might be slightly flawed. It seems that it will be better than what we currently have. So I will be supporting issue 1 there as well. In addition, I think it's important to note some of the organizations that are supporting issue 1. The Ohio Association of Professional Firefighters, the League of Women Voters, Ohio's NAACP Conference, the AFL-CIO, SEIU, Ohio Farmers Union, and many more. Now, think about the presidential and the Senate race. Please remember, these people are politicians. And as someone trying to be a politician, they aren't always the best hang. They aren't always the perfect person that we want and need them to be. They're advocating for your vote in the best way they can. And part of what I see my responsibility is, as an independent, is to let you know where I stand for the different people in these high-level races and offer, without personalities, without trying to offer bias or without trying to persuade you, offer you some of the facts of why I'm making the decisions that I'm making. Each person that decides to run must be validated and judged based on their records. And I hope you offer me that same judgment. Thank you for listening. Vote your conscience above all. Take this as one part of your decision in the race or none at all. This is just how I'll be voting in the next 2 weeks. Please vote on or before November 5th. You can vote early at the Board of Election, and you can vote on November 5th at your designated polling location. Those can be found at the Board of Election website, boe.cuyahogacounty.gov, or those links are also available on my website, freemanforcongress.com. Have a good rest of your day and live free.